Absolutely. And you mentioned that you're getting people coming to you kind of who've never tried mindfulness before and sort of saying, I'm interested, what can I do? How do I get started? So what would you suggest to people if they want to start a practice? What would you suggest?
I like to start people off really simply, because if you say you should meditate for an hour, it's never going to happen. So I start people with 5 minutes a day. And 5 minutes a day, everybody has time for 5 minutes, I hope. So I recommend using audio recordings. We have an app called UCLA Mindful. It's also all of our meditations on our website, but of course there's countless wonderful apps out there. But somebody who's helping guide you through, so you're not feeling like you're doing it all by yourself. Or classes. Like right now our center is offering lots and lots of virtual classes where you can be anywhere in the world and
anyone can access those.
Anyone can access that.
I don't have to be in the US. Okay.
Absolutely. We have a course called Mindful Awareness Practices, which is our basic 6-week introduction to mindfulness. And at the end of that, people will have created a daily practice. They will learn how to work with difficult emotions. They'll learn how to cultivate more compassion for themselves and others. So there's a lot of skills that come out at the end of those 6 weeks. If you're practicing, you want to try it at home, it's just the simplicity of what we're doing, and the way we just start is noticing something that's happening in the present moment, like our breath, the rising and falling of our abdomen or chest, or the air moving through our nose. And then we stay with that. We try to sustain attention, but then our attention wanders. Yes. And of course our attention wanders, because that means that's what human minds do. They wander. And so there's a moment where you'll notice it, and then you just gently bring your attention back to your breath. And that's the very, very basis of this practice, and it gets a little more nuanced from there.
So as people are sort of starting this and practicing, often, there are moments when it's challenging and people find it difficult to maintain the practice. Is there anything you'd recommend to help people stay on track, just to make things a little bit smoother and easier? Anything that else that you learned along the way that you think, actually, this is a useful tip that I share with a lot of the people I teach that they find helpful?
It's important not to get discouraged. A lot of people think that they're not doing it right if their minds are thinking. I think there's something out there in the ether, popular understanding, that if you meditate, your mind's supposed to go blank. And that doesn't happen to most people. So if you, or pretty much to anybody, if you're meditating and you're finding yourself lost in thoughts, that's part of the process. We're learning, it's like we're building a muscle. And that muscle is getting stronger over time. And as many times as you wander away, you have the opportunity to bring it back. And that's something actually we used to say to the ADHD patients. We would say, hey, you have more opportunity than anybody to teach your mind to come back. You're going to have the strongest muscles ever because your mind is wandering like crazy, right? So the first is to be really gentle with yourself and not so judgmental of your practice, and just keep trying. And like any habit, it's hard to do. It's not like we can say, okay, start meditating. I mean, if I say, okay, go to the gym every day, do it, people, what happens. So finding support around this is helpful. And that's why the apps and classes and things like that
being in a group and a community of people, that can, as you said, that can be really helpful to keep the motivation to share what's happening. Yeah, that sounds really helpful. Excellent. Okay. And are there anything people should be aware of from a sort of safety perspective? Anything that people should just be thinking about if they are planning to start a practice?
For the most part, it's pretty much, I would say most people can do this practice, and there's not a lot of risk. The only thing would be if you have some kind of mental health diagnosis, you may want to be in contact with a professional as you do it, just to make sure. And that's probably more for more of the severe diagnoses than the kind of the kind of more midline. But what I would say is, for instance, as someone who's very, very, very depressed, trying to do mindfulness is probably going to be a hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to get your head out of the water a little bit, whether that's with therapy, medication, and so forth, and then give it a try. It tends to be more accessible to people who've not like severe mental health concerns.
Okay. And what about if somebody wants to teach? You founded the International Mindfulness Teachers Association. So if somebody decided that actually they've had a practice for a while, they would perhaps like to be sharing this with other people, what would make a good kind of foundation or groundwork for them, do you think?
Well, at this point, there's lots of teacher training programs out there. So I do recommend it, that to get into most teacher training programs, not all, or the accredited ones, you have to have had a meditation practice for a number of years and done some retreat practice, meaning going into like, a period of time, whether 5 days or more. So we have a program at UCLA, the Training in Mindfulness Facilitation, and people go through a year program of learning to be a teacher. But there's many programs out there that are really wonderful, that give you the foundation that you need and the peer support and the confidence and supervision. So I think I really do recommend it. We developed the International Mindfulness Teachers Association because the field is so young, and there were the concern. I mean, this is the concern. The concern is that there are people out there who just do a weekend workshop in mindfulness and then suddenly put out a shingle and say that they're a mindfulness teacher. And no one would really do this. Mindfulness is deceptively simple. People think it's just pay attention in the present moment, but it's an embodied practice, as we're talking about. And the best teachers are the teachers who have years and years of personal experience, who then embody it and use it creatively because it's coming from within them, as opposed to just like reading a book or going to a workshop and then teaching it. So because the field is unregulated, that was why the International Mindfulness Teachers Association arose. And now we're creating best practices and standards and professionalization for the field. And for like, a 200-hour program, you can then get certified, and you have this association, this affiliation. So it's really, I think it's really, really important for the field to maintain the integrity of what we're doing out there.
Absolutely, to have that rigor around. And I mean, I think it's often about holding that container for the people you're working with. If you haven't had that deep embodied practice yourself, it's very hard for you to, things can come up for people, can't they? And if you haven't experienced it yourself, it's going to be much harder to hold that container and make it safe for the people you're working with, I think. So it sounds like really, really good work that you're doing. I wanted to ask you about how you keep things fresh for yourself. You've been doing this for a long time. What kind of, is there ongoing learning? What sort of things do you do to keep it fresh and meaningful and powerful for yourself, Diana?
Well, I think life makes it fresh, I've certainly over 30 years of practice gotten into ruts and sort of gotten like tired of this or that, and then something shifts. And for instance, when I had my daughter, she's 11 now, and I had a kind of, I'm such a good practitioner, and then boom, I have this baby, and then this child who's challenging me, and I've had to learn how to bring my practice into that, and that certainly has kept it fresh, and it always is fresh each day with a kid. But learning what it means to integrate mindfulness and embodied practice into being a parent, learning how do I meditate when I haven't slept all night, and or she's up she's keeping me up at night. So that's my meditation time, and how interesting. And I just get to be here in the stillness with this infant when she's little. So there's that, or the freshness of what does it mean to teach in this time of COVID? What does it mean to teach? What are my teachings going to be like in this time of social unrest that's happening, particularly in the US, right? So it's really challenging me. It's really challenging me to look at my own internalized racism and to dismantle the racism in me so that I can be a better teacher and supporter and ally as a white person in the role that I play, in the leadership role. So I feel like I'm always learning and growing, and And it's such a great question, because it's like, wow, life is one big, one big learn. And I'm just giving you little snippets here, but yeah.
But what's your approach to that? If you are, as you say, given everything that's going on in the world, and that there's many different sort of dynamics now happening, how do you, I guess, get a bit of a handle on that for yourself in terms of thinking about, well, which approach do I want to take? How do I want to think about this? How do I want to reflect on this? Is there anything you can share?
Are you talking specifically? I'm not sure I understand the question. Like
just with everything that's happening around, you mentioned sort of the looking at your own racism and that side of things. I'm curious as to how you frame it to yourself in terms of, how do I learn from this? How do I grow and develop myself, my practice from this?
Yeah, so it's something that that has been an ongoing exploration for decades for me, and looking at the way that like oppression manifests within me, my own inner racism, classism, sexism, gender, all of that is like embedded in being like a human being in these cultural conditions in this time. And so one of the interesting things that mindfulness has given me is it gives me a tool to explore what's happening in my internal world in a very like non-judgmental and loving and compassionate way. So there's been some very interesting research looking at how mindfulness can impact implicit bias, right? So implicit bias, that snap judgments that we make, the blind spots that we have, but that mindfulness actually can reduce implicit bias-based reactions. And so I feel like this tool of when I see my own fear arising, my own white fragility, my own thoughts that are replicating racist or sexist or classist structures inside me, that I can notice it, I can name it, I can bring compassion to myself, I can hold it in this space. And I feel like the work is very, very profound and very hard. It's very challenging. And it's not the only thing to do, because there's also like the larger structures that need to be dismantling, not just dismantling our own inner racism, but it's the bigger picture that is really needed. But I think this helps. It's just one piece of the puzzle, the inner work that we can do around this.
And so much of it has to start with ourselves. If we're not willing to look at it in ourselves, then it's going to be very hard for us to then go out and actually make change in the wider world. And I think you're right, that possibility of sitting and creating a small amount of awareness and distance between what's going on and observing, and then seeing, well, what comes up for me? What does that mean for me? How do I want to work with that? It's really powerful. Absolutely. So we're coming towards the end of our time together, Diana, and I just had a couple more questions for you. So firstly, what's your vision for the future? Where do you want to see mindfulness going in the future? People practicing natural awareness. What's your vision?
My hope is that mindfulness can be more and more integrated into people's lives in a way that it's not seen as something like unusual or alternative or cutting edge, but it becomes like a foundation of how people operate in the world, so that it's and this is already happening in many ways. It's being taught in schools, it's being taught and brought into hospitals, into businesses, into but I think in the United States it's probably a very East Coast, West Coast phenomenon, and not it's more like urban centers than it is as a whole. But I feel like these tools are so tremendously valuable that it would be helpful to be incorporated into institutions, and also I asked this question, like, how can it contribute to the healing of this planet? How can it, and some of it is like what we're talking about right now, this mental health solution. Like, it's one of many mental health solutions that can help people to hold this like what's happening right now in this world. And so the more it's integrated, it's part of the culture and the world, I think we're going to be the better off. And can it be brought more to frontline workers right now during COVID? Can it be brought to politicians?
Yes.
Can it be brought, I know they're doing incredible stuff in England right now, in the UK, with the National Health Service bringing mindfulness in. So I'd like to see more and more of that. And anyway, that's what comes to me right now.
Yeah, perfect. And where can people find you online if they want to find out more about what you're doing? Where's the best place for them to look?
So 2 places, the uclahealth.org/Mark. So that's our Mindful Awareness Research Center website. And then I have my own site, dianawinston.com. And I'm on a couple of different apps. So you can find me on our UCLA Mindful app and the 10% Happier app. And I'm going to be doing some stuff with the Waking Up app. So I'm around quite a bit. And then my book is The Little Book of Being, and that's available wherever books are sold. And I also have a couple of other books, including Fully Present, The Science, Art, and Practice of Mindfulness, which I co-wrote with a scientist.
Fantastic. There's some great resources there for people to look at and find out some more. And I guess the last thing is just, do you have any last comments, thoughts, anything else you'd like to share about mindfulness, about the body, anything else that you just wanted to leave people with as a last thought?
Okay. Well, first of all, one more thing I want to remember to tell people. Most Thursdays at Pacific Standard Time, 12:30, I have a free meditation that anybody can join on Zoom. So that's another resource for you. But your question is, anything I want to leave people with? Maybe just end with one last practice.
How
about
would be
that?
lovely. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be really nice.
So wherever you are, just to settle back again, taking a breath or two. And see if you can notice what's happening for you. Like, what's happening in my body right now? There is heaviness and weight and lightness and tingling and warmth. There might be comfort or discomfort. See if you can let whatever is here be here. Just allowing it to be exactly as it is. And breathe and soften. And then notice what's happening in your heart area or your emotions. Are you feeling happy, at rest? Maybe there's some anxiety or loss or sadness, or what is here? Just checking in. Sometimes nothing's happening, but making space for whatever is here. We can have the capacity to hold this. We really can. And if you notice your thoughts, is there a particular mental activity happening? Allowing whatever is here to be here. And so here we are, embodied in our emotions, in this body here, in our heart, in our mind. Resting, softening, just being. And let's think of all of the people around the world who are in need of this place of fundamental well-being, of embodiment, of kindness and compassion. And just offer a sense of kindness out into the world. A world that so deeply needs compassion right now. Take one breath. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And here we are.
What a lovely way to end a podcast. Thank you.
My pleasure. Yeah.
Diana, it was really lovely to meet you. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to me today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing you again at the Embodiment Conference. So it was a real pleasure.
That would be wonderful. Yeah, thank you for all your great questions and for your presence.
Great. Thank you.